finished yesterday. They are very... Whoever puts up the better performance in this Legacy Open likely will take the #2 spot in the player race.
His opponent, Chris Fornaro, is playing one of the honest decks, if anything, two honest decks of Legacy, Punishing Jund, which is a, if you're familiar with Jund in Modern, it's very similar with better cards, with Grove of the Burn Willows, Punishing Fire rolled in as well. This deck is very effective at taking advantage of the other creature-based strategies of the format. It's very good against combo decks like Elves. It generally has a positive matchup against decks like Esper Blade, decks like Death and Taxes, decks that are playing something resembling conventional Magic, but it does struggle a little bit in the unfair matchups. It has some hand disruption, usually some utility in the sideboard, but certainly Sneak and Show, not one of the decks that Chris wants to see this round.
Yeah, so both players playing fetch lands in turn one, a little bit of jockeying as far as how they fetch them. Chris played a fetch land, passed. Brad played a fetch land, cracked it. Chris, in response, cracked his in case Brad's on a Stifle deck. He got his basic out in time. But then he's not. Brad makes Volcanic Island and Ponder. To be fair, Chris doesn't know that yet. He still may think Brad could be on a Rug Delver list.
Nothing out of the ordinary yet to suggest that he's necessarily playing Sneak and Show. Again, for those of you still kind of learning about Legacy, Sneak and Show is exactly what it sounds like. It uses the cards Sneak Attack and Show and Tell to cheat in very large, dominating creatures like Emrakul and Gristlebrand.
Yeah,
the rest of the deck is setup and protection with cards like Force of Will.
Deck identification is actually a pretty big skill here. The games are so quick that you will need to figure out what your opponent's playing as soon as you can. Right now, Brad could be Rug Delver, could be Show and Tell, could even be a Miracles list, I suppose. Yeah. And we see Tarmogoyf as the turn 2 play from Chris. That more or less tells what deck he's on.
And this may signal impending doom for Chris, unfortunately, as his hand does not appear to be that disruptive.
Yeah, he does have a Liliana, so he's going to have something that he can do. He has a fetch land, Abrupt Decay, a Bloodbraid Elf, a Grove of the Burn Willows. I think he's going to go for the safe play. He's going to go ahead and wasteland away that Volcanic Island. Regardless of what unfair thing Brad's doing, that play at least will work.
Yeah.
And Brad's going to Brainstorm in response using that mana. Draws another Force of Will, a Gitaxian Probe, and a Show and Tell. That was the big draw. His hand, you see, with 2 Emrakuls in it, 2 Force of Wills, had a little too much redundancy. He's going to go up. He's going to be able to get rid of the second copy of each.
This allows him to play Sneak Attack, Show and Tell rather next turn with Force of Will backup, something Chris is going to be hard-pressed to beat.
Yeah, well, he has to... Yeah, the Force of Will means that he's not going to be threatened by the Liliana. The Liliana is Chris's really only answer to resolved Emrakul. If Brad can get Emrakul into play, he can make him, protect it from the Liliana, and then swing and annihilate the board.
Yeah. Now, it's not exactly coast is clear. We have the list in front of us. We know that Chris can't really get out of this. You do see in some Jund lists or green-black decks stray copies of Diabolic Edict. So there is some things for Brad to consider here. But with the Gitaxian Probe, he's going to get to have the information that the coast is clear for him.
Yeah, and he actually found an even safer play here. He drew Gristlebrand, so now he has the option of what he wants to Show and Tell into play. I think once he's seen Chris's hand, he may still put Emrakul into play. But both will be just fine. Yeah, he sees that it's Abrupt Decay, Liliana, Bloodbraid. So he now knows that if he Show and Tells, the only thing Chris can put into play is a land or a Bloodbraid. Brad's not scared of either.
Bloodbraid does not trigger in that scenario. It's a cast trigger, not in his play.
It's just a 3/2. And we see Lotus Petal, City of Traders, and here we go. Show and Tell from Brad. Looks going for the turn 3 kill. Maybe not doesn't die on turn 3, but the turn 3 locked the game at the very least. And we'll see whether or not Brad chooses Emrakul or Gristlebrand. Both are pretty good here. Chris is going to go ahead and Abrupt Decay the Lotus Petal.
Gives him some protection in case it's Gristlebrand, because the mana might matter this turn, but...
Yeah, I'm assuming Brad made some sort of mana in response to the Abrupt Decay. Yeah. It's possible he just didn't care. And it's Emrakul that he went with. He's going to pass back the turn. And remember, he does have the Force of Will for the Liliana. Chris has to try for it, though. He's going to make Brad have it. Brad shows the force of will, and that's game 1 in Brad's pocket.
No fuss, no muss.
Nope. Do you have the force of will for Liliana? Well, shucks. Okay.
Really powerful opening there from Brad, and you can see why this deck, middle of last year, I would say roughly, was absolutely crushing the Open Series, primarily in the hands of William Jensen. There was an invitational where it was multiple copies of it were in the elimination rounds. It's waned a little bit, I would say, in recent months, but still one of the major decks of the format.
Oh, I would still say this is the premier combo deck of Legacy. There are a lot of, not to say that there are not other playable combo decks. Certainly Brian Bronduin showed us last round that Storm's a fine deck, Elves is a fine deck. There are plenty of fine combo decks, but as far as consistently being good and being good at every point in the meta, I think Show and Tell, Sneak and Show's got to be at the top.
Okay, moving on to the sideboard here, we'll see if Chris has 15 offers of any help here. He has a Diabolic Edict and a Duress, excellent to bring in. A Life from the Loam, a Nile Spellbomb, 2 Surgical Extractions, a Crow's Hand Grip, 2 Golgari Charms, a Bloodbraid Elf, a Grafdigger's Cage, 2 Pyroblast, a Chains of Mephistopheles, and Umezawa's Jitte. I like the Pyroblast, of course. Brad's base blue. The Diabolic Edict can be very good in a lot of spots, and the additional Duress is good as well.
Yeah, so pretty straightforward sideboarding there for Chris. You may even see cards like Surgical Extraction get boarded in, Chains possibly, just because there are so many cards in the deck that aren't very good. You know, you see like Bloodbraid Elf, it's pretty weak here. A Lightning Bolt. There's a lot of cards that, you know, he's not very happy to have.
Lightning Bolt's
fine.
Lightning Bolt's
fine.
No, I mean, we still have Punching Fires and Abrupt Decays in the
All
deck.
right,
We're not touching Lightning Bolt, man.
All right, I mean, I guess in the ideal world that we had, 20 sideboard cards, yeah, that card would end up going out too, but it's too far down the list that Lava Spike stays in.
So what's going on in Brad's sideboard?
Well, Brad's sideboard, we have Grafdigger's Cages, Red Elemental Blast, Swan Songs, Echoing Truths, Through the Breaches, and really the winner, Leyline of Sanctity.
Yeah, Leyline of Sanctity is pretty funny. Obviously, it's very good against all the discard spells in Liliana the Veil. I played Jund in a invitational in Atlanta a year and a half ago, 2 years, I want to say, because I was just losing a lot to Leyline of the Sanctity. It was kind of a high watermark for combo decks in the format. Leylines were really prevalent, and I was catching a lot of splash damage with Burn because that card's just game over.
When you're Lava Spiking your opponent, White Leyline seems like pretty big game.
Right, so I'm like, I'm sick of this. I want to play a deck with some disruption. I'm going to play Jund. And then in the first round, I played against Sneak and Show and got turn 0 Leylined, and I have a hand of, Thoughtseize, Hymn to Torak, whatever.
Your game plan playing on Leyline seems
I was like, oh, that's really stupid of me. It's a little bit different this time around, but I'm still just losing to White Leyline. So very good against Jund decks. Their disruption is almost exclusively involves your hand or Diabolic effects. That's where most of the meaningful is going to come from, and Leyline locks that all up.
Well, and that's kind of what White Leyline does, especially when non-white decks are playing 4 White Leylines on the board. It's got to be backbreakingly good because if it's not in your opener, it's actually not castable.
Right.
And Brad, there we go. White Leyline. Boom. Your favorite.
And Chris's hand has at least a hymn in it.
Yeah, all right, Deathrite Shaman. Sure, now Brad can just at will assemble a combo. So we see Thoughtseize, Hymn to Turok, Abrupt Decay, go over the Bird Willows and a Bloodbraid. Well, that seems... we'll see if Chris left in the Maelstrom Pulses and if he can find one and cast one before he dies.
That is quite a potent hand against for Leyline of Sanctity.
Yeah, it even costs 4. You can't Abrupt Decay it.
And it looks like Brad has turned to Show and Tell in hand for Emrakul already, so
okay, well,
not bad.
Can Chris? He can't even cast. He can't draw both a fetch land and a Maelstrom Pulse this turn because the Deathrite doesn't make mana. So, Grove of the Burn Willows will find another Deathrite Shaman. And now he's just kind of gonna pass the turn back. And yeah, it looks like we have Show and Tell from Brad here. He has the option. I don't see why he wouldn't go for it. I guess he could top deck. Chris could. No, his target player sacrifices a creature.
Yeah.
Oh, just kidding. Okay, there's just nothing to be worried about. Emrakul and Bloodbraid Elf. Yep, this is
these are two totally reasonable draws from Brad thus far.
I don't know if Chris has an out. He doesn't have a third land, and he doesn't have a pulse, and he doesn't have a Liliana. He draws Dark Confidant for the turn. That's all right, and that's game. Brad Nelson, 2-0. Defeats Chris Fornaro.
And a chuckle from Brad. Legacy is one of those formats where sometimes stuff just happens to you. I think if you
that was one of those.
If you can take it in stride and understand that it's part of the experience, I think that Legacy is a ton of fun. You just have to know going into things that sometimes something like that's going to happen to you. And this round, it was Chris's turn to be the victim. His deck's not really well equipped to handle a deck as explosive and consistent as Sneak and Show. And
yeah, I remember my first Legacy tournament.